Black Panther's Rogues Gallery is an interesting one. Being the King of Wakanda means you have enemies both in your own country and around the world. That'd be tough for any hero, right? Well, today I wanted to focus specifically on Black Panther's Rogues Gallery. Who is his strongest villain? Who is his weakest? Does he have any you've never heard of before? Can they be adapted into live action in a future movie? Well, I'll discuss all of that today, so let's get started right now. I know that historically, Doctor Doom is the greatest enemy of the Fantastic Four, at least in the general consensus, but there's easily a case to be made why he's actually Black Panther's greatest enemy. Both Black Panther and Doctor Doom are leaders of their countries, but they go about it in slightly different ways. T'Challa is traditionally a pretty good king. I know they technically don't have a democracy as much as rewards for their bloodlines and trials by combat, but I think if they did vote as a population, T'Challa would still win. He's just that likable. Doctor Doom, on the other hand, is a tyrant who rules over Latveria with an iron fist. Yeah, I don't think he'd win the popular vote. And he's not even a real doctor. Yeah, these two are great parallels to each other, and it's why they make such great foes. The fact that Black Panther sits on a mountain of vibranium makes Wakanda a target for people like Doom, and it's tough because the supervillain is so powerful. He's like an evil blend of Tony Stark and Doctor Strange, which makes him an absolute beast of a villain that I wouldn't want to cross. I just really hope Black Panther and Doom get a chance to meet in live action. You know, the fact that Wakanda Forever was announced as the end of Phase 4 and Secret Wars is coming for Phase 6 is interesting. Doctor Doom is the main villain of the Secret Wars 2015 storyline, so wouldn't it make sense to end Phase 4 with a Doctor Doom reveal? And hey, if they can lead to that epic Secret Wars fight with Black Panther wearing the Infinity Gauntlet taking on God Emperor Doom, I wouldn't complain. So Namor represents another worldwide problem for Black Panther. Much like Doctor Doom, Namor runs his own country and has clashed politically with Wakanda before, but Namor is just a different type of villain than Doctor Doom. Doom is the very essence of ego and evil, like you know he's going to do bad things. But Namor is much more of a wild card. He's been presented as a hero, as a villain, and everywhere in between. It's what makes him such a fascinating character, but his loyalty to his people and his insane strength will always make him one of the most powerful enemies to Black Panther. There's one specific arc that I find fascinating. One time, tension between Wakanda and Atlantis were so high and all-out war was on the horizon. Both sides secretly were gearing to attack, and Namor eventually lied to Thanos' invading army by telling them that his Infinity Stone that they were looking for was actually in Wakanda, with the goal that Thanos would go and destroy Wakanda for Namor. What trickery! Overall, the point is that these two countries are at odds with each other, and that's a much stronger enemy than just a guy who can swim really well underwater. But fighting wise, Namor is no slouch either, so don't think that because you can catch him on land that he'll make an easy target. Do so at your own peril. So the comic backstory for Killmonger is different from what we saw in live action, but I think this is one of those instances where the movie actually crafts a story better by changing the character's backstory. Both are excellent, but the movie making Killmonger related to T'Challa just made it all the more powerful. And as we learned about his history and his motivation and his determination, we started to sympathize with the villain. In the comics, the broad strokes are the same, but it unfolds a bit differently. Killmonger's family is executed, and Killmonger is taken in by the traitorous M'Debwe, who instills in Killmonger the idea that they are superior and need to rise up against all the inferiority in the world. That type of dangerous mindset will always be one of T'Challa's greatest villains. Yeah, sure, Killmonger is strong and poses a huge physical threat, but something the movie and the comics do great is framing Killmonger's whole shtick as something rooted in legitimacy. He'll always represent what T'Challa could do with all that Wakandan technology. I think he had the perfect end in the MCU, but I know there's many who want to see him resurrected to become the Black Panther. Do you think that would even work at this point? Klaw was a bit of a secondary, goofy villain in the Black Panther movie, but I don't think we can discount how powerful he is overall, especially because how in the comics he's perhaps even more dangerous. The comic backstory has the same overall template. He really wants vibranium and works to steal it from Wakanda. In a fight with T'Chaka, a young T'Challa rushed to his father's aid and Klaw almost killed the future king, but Klaw was literally disarmed instead. And then things get weird. Years later, wanting to mount another attack, Klaw builds a massive sonic converter device, which he built using vibranium from black markets around the world, and because maybe he knew he was in a comic book or something, he decided to jump into the machine with the hope that it would grant him superhuman powers. What a brave gamble, but it turns out he was right. The machine turned his body into something non-human, and instead found that he was now in essence living sound. Sure, he hasn't been that successful with any of his schemes in the past, which might make you question why he's ranked so high, but the skills of being living sound, along with powerful attacks and basically being immortal, makes him a pretty strong opponent overall. Think we can get Andy Serkis back as living sound in Wakanda Forever? That might be hard. We most likely won't ever see the comic-accurate version of White Wolf in the MCU. The live-action franchise has dabbled with making Bucky Barnes the White Wolf and making him a Wakandan protector, but that hasn't been explored that much. I honestly thought that the Falcon and the Winter Soldier should have ended with a title card that said Captain America and the White Wolf, since Bucky was attempting to move on from that moniker, but that's not the point for this video. Anyways, the White Wolf in the comics is actually T'Challa's adopted brother. His name was Hunter, and when he was young, his parents were in a plane crash near the border of Wakanda, where he was the only survivor. King T'Chaka took him in, and even though a lot of Wakandans were wary of this outsider, Hunter loved Wakanda dearly. When T'Challa was born, Hunter grew up jealous of T'Challa and became a fierce and murderous warrior, eventually being exiled and doing mercenary work around the world. And yet, he still always held that grudge against his adoptive brother and has appeared every now and then to fight Black Panther. It is kind of funny how they've taken tiny slivers of this character's backstory and personality and given it to other MCU characters. They gave Killmonger his family connection to T'Challa, and then they gave his name to Bucky. Did you know that Ryan Coogler has said in the past that he was once considering Kraven the Hunter to be in the first Black Panther movie? How would that have changed the film? I can't really see how he fits into the story they told unless you swap out Klaw with him, but that doesn't make much sense. Anyways, Kraven and Black Panther have been in multiple conflicts throughout the years. There's been a few times where Kraven has been asked to capture Black Panther, and although he never succeeds, it's always a pretty balanced fight. There's a fun story where Kraven is told if he brings Black Panther to a certain doctor, the doctor will help Kraven with his desire to find a way to die. Comics are wild. Anyways, Kraven has a similar skill set as Black Panther in the sense that he constantly ingests different jungle herbs that grant him enhanced strength, speed, and durability. Now, I think it's impossible we'll ever see a Kraven versus Black Panther fight in live action, but I can still hope, right? Although M'Baku has grown to be one of T'Challa's closest confidants in the MCU, the comic has the character stay on a more villainous route. In the movie, M'Baku starts off antagonistic, wanting the throne for himself, but ends up eventually saving T'Challa's life and helping him save the world. See, you'll succeed in life more if you're good. That's the lesson there. Anyways, in the comics, M'Baku is basically Wakanda's second greatest warrior behind T'Challa, and the villain had a tendency to plot to take the throne for himself whenever he could. He wasn't able to get Black Panther strength, obviously, but he did kill a rare white gorilla, then ate its flesh and bathed in its blood, and the gorilla's strength was transferred to M'Baku. He's also been a part of a few super evil teams over the years, like the Masters of Evil and the Lethal Legion, and his constant desire to best Black Panther has been a pain in T'Challa's side for years. Honestly, I'm glad they made M'Baku a good guy in the MCU. It's just overall better in the long run for his character. Okay, I already mentioned Dr. Doom, and he's definitely the top dog in this list of villains, but there's actually a variant of the evil tyrant that I want to mention. In a different universe, there exists T'Chana, who is T'Challa's sister, and in her universe, she was beaten out for the Wakanda throne by her brother and went searching for ways to increase her magical abilities so that she could come back and kick her brother's butt. Her quest led her to Latveria, where she became a disciple to that universe's Victor Von Doom. When the time was right, T'Chana killed Doom, took his armor, and successfully installed herself as leader of Latveria. One of her biggest evil accomplishments is that she was able to kill President Steve Rogers, so you know she's powerful. She has all the wisdom of a Wakandan matched with the ruthlessness and aggression of a Latverian, and the results are a villain that I'm very happy is stuck in another universe and not our own. We'd be in trouble if she set her sights on us. A lot of villains in Black Panther's rogues gallery usually just want Wakandan run a different way. They don't like T'Challa's leadership and always think they could do a much better job. That brings me to Tetu, a villain who, when he was younger, left civilization because he wanted knowledge beyond the physical realm. And then, when no one could give him the answers he wanted, he went and isolated himself in the wilderness of Wakanda. And normally I'd advise against such behavior. You can't solve your problems by running off and living in the woods. Trust me, I've tried. But in Tetu's case, it worked pretty well for him. He emerged from his isolation with the ability to manipulate the forces of nature and wanted to overthrow T'Challa and the rest of the Wakandan government. And overall, Tetu proved himself a smart, tactical, and ruthless rebel who was able to help inspire a lot of soldiers to his cause. That type of villain is extremely dangerous. If I had to pick who would be future villains for Black Panther to face in live action, I'd pick Achebe. This dude is straight up terrifying. His backstory is that his wife was attacked by soldiers and stabbed 32 times. So Achebe then made a deal with a demon for his soul and then hunted down everyone who was responsible and stabbed them 32 times. After that, he did what most insane people do. He became a politician. He studied at Yale and after earning multiple degrees, went back to his home country and helped start a war that led thousands of refugees to flee into Wakanda. Achebe used this to sneak into Wakanda and eventually worked to topple the whole government. That's already pretty impressive, right? Well, I haven't even mentioned the best part. After a bit, the demon he made a deal with nopes out, which caused Achebe to go insane and start talking to a hand puppet and became great at ventriloquism. I promise I'm not joking. Baron Zemo and Black Panther obviously have a very complicated relationship in the MCU. Zemo was the one who set up the assassination of King T'Chaka, and it put Black Panther on his quest for revenge. Ultimately, T'Challa didn't go through with his act of vengeance. In fact, T'Challa actually stopped Zemo from killing himself, which was a nice arc for the future king. In the comics, Zemo is obviously not only a Black Panther villain as he's more of an everyone villain, but the parallels between the two have made for some interesting comic arcs and storylines. In fact, Baron Zemo was actually the second villain Black Panther ever fought in the comics, so the connection is there. He's not exactly a physical match for T'Challa, but he's a genius and master combatant, so he can definitely hold his own in a fight. I love villains that aren't just pure fighters. Yeah, it's great seeing hand-to-hand combat fights between Black Panther and his villains, but I really enjoy watching a normally tactical and physically stronger hero have to deal with a different power set than they're used to. Zenzi is one of those villains with a fascinating skill set. She can affect other people's emotions in extreme ways, which it may not seem that impressive, but just know that in her origin, she was about to be executed on the edge of a mass grave by a bunch of soldiers, but was able to use her abilities to make the soldiers kill one another instead. That kind of power is certainly dangerous, and in the comics she has used her powers to incite riots in Wakanda, and again that's her ability to attack the very structure that T'Challa holds dear. She's mostly the perfect weapon to have on any team that wants to plan a coup. And fun fact, one time Zenzi was recruited by Bast herself to help the Panther goddess reclaim her power after it had been stolen by Emperor Jakarra, aka Killmonger, who had come across a symbiote and merged with it and had become the new ruler of the intergalactic empire of Wakanda. Yeah, that story is wild. Man, okay, there's one specialty villain I want to give a shout out to, and that's King Cadaver. King Cadaver looks like a mutated green fuzzball come to life, and I mean that in the best way possible. He has a face only a mother could love, and even then, that's a little contingent on how blind the mother is. Anyways, King Cadaver was a normal man who joined with N'Jadaka to fight T'Challa, but then was mutated by the resurrection altar into his current form. He's basically a psychic who can cause psychic pain and delusions. He hung out in a graveyard for a bit and was eventually crushed by a brachiosaur. So yeah, this little guy is awesome and I want to see him in 50 movies. I don't know how exactly you'd fit him into the plot though. Maybe you can have a situation where someone is trying to resurrect T'Challa or Killmonger and it results in this horrific mutation. Look, it's a stretch, but a man can dream, right? Man, everyone wants to claim their birthright, don't they? So I've already mentioned White Wolf being T'Challa's adopted brother, but now let's talk about T'Challa's half-brother. Jakarra was the son of T'Chaka and a spy named Matina and was eventually raised raised abroad. And yeah, he hated T'Challa too. Man, that guy cannot catch a break. Everyone hates him. Anyways, this villain's whole deal is that he's infused with vibranium, which is a pretty cool idea in concept. So due to some iffy science, Jakarra ended up turning himself into a monster. He hit a geothermal pipe under something called the Barrier Volcano Complex with a vibranium dagger. And then while he was being exposed to the geothermal energy, he cut himself with the same dagger, metabolizing the vibranium and turning the heat energy into mass, which resulted in Jakarra turning into a big monster. Do you understand it? I don't. But I do know that this was a strong enemy who had the power to absorb nearby energy like vibranium. Black Panther and Storm ended up throwing Jakarra into a volcano because they weren't sure what else to do with him. So there's actually a lot of supervillains who took the name Malice. I guess it's a pretty decent baddie name after all. But the one I wanted to mention was the second Malice, who actually in the comics was Nakia. See, Nakia's comic counterpart isn't as nice as the MCU version. In the comics, she loved T'Challa and was jealous of one of his girlfriends and plotted to kill her, leading to her banishment. This allowed her to fall in with the wrong crowd, and she eventually gained powers of her own. Yeah, she was overall a big problem for Black Panther. Do you think she could still turn bad in the MCU? Do you have a favorite Black Panther villain? When they make Black Panther 3, you think any of these villains would make an appearance or not? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching CBR.